of zoology classes. So we have been taking up with the chapter called as Principles of Inheritance and Variations. So with regards to that, in the previous session, we started off with, or rather we had completed with the Morgan's dihybrid experiment, right? And along with that, we also have done with polygenic inheritance in the previous session. So in today's session, let's take up with another topic, which is called as sex determination. So what exactly is this sex determination, right? So the process of determining the sex of an organism is what we actually call it as sex determination. So in different organisms, there are different ways how the sex of an organism will be determined, right? So in different organisms, there are different ways in which the sex of an organism would be determined. So how exactly is the sex determined in different organisms is what we are going to take up in today's session. So let's begin with the topic called as sex determination, right? So there are a lot of ways, as I've already said, there are a lot of ways in which the sex of an organism would be determined, right? So of which the first method of sex determination, what we'll be taking up, is called as chromosomal basis of sex determination. So this would be the first type of sex determination what we'll be taking up, which is called as chromosomal basis of sex determination. So this is the first topic what we'll be taking up, the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So what does this chromosomal basis of sex determination mean? So here there are certain chromosomes which are actually involved in determining the sex of the chromosome. From the name, that's what we can make out, the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So chromosomes are the ones which are actually responsible for the determination of sex in a particular organism. That we start calling it as the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So the entire concept of this chromosomal basis of sex determination was first put forth by a scientist by name Henking. Right? So Henking was the scientist who first came up with the concept of chromosomal basis of sex determination in the year 1891. Right? So in the year 1891, this scientist by name Henking started working out on the chromosomal basis of sex determination while he was actually working in a process called as spermatogenesis. So while working on spermatogenesis in insects, he came up with this particular topic of chromosomal basis of sex determination. Now, what exactly did Henking observe? Right. So while working on the spermatogenesis in case of insects, I hope all are familiar with spermatogenesis. It is nothing but the formation of sperms. The process of formation of sperms is called spermatogenesis. So while working on the spermatogenesis process in case of insects, Henking observed that 50% of the sperms had an extra chromosome, right? So while working on the process of spermatogenesis, we are very much familiar with the topic called spermatogenesis, right? Where a diploid cell, that is a germ cell, by the end of second meiotic division would form 4 haploid sperm cells. So what Henking observed is, out of the 4 haploid sperm cells which are formed from one diploid germ cell, 50% of these sperms, that is the male gametes, had one extra chromosome. And that extra chromosome, he started calling it as the X body. Right? So 50% of the sperms had one extra chromosome, and that extra chromosome was actually called as X body by Henry. So what he observed again was only 50% of the sperms had this X body, whereas the remaining 50% did not have this X body. But he could not explain the significance of this particular X body. Right? So what we are talking about is Henking, while working on the process of spermatogenesis in case of insects, he observed that 50% of the sperms had one extra chromosome, and that extra chromosome he called it as X body. And the remaining 50% of the sperms did not have this X body. But he could not explain what is the significance of this particular X body. Later on in the year 1902, right? Later on in the year 1902, another scientist by name Macklung in the year 1902, right? So while again working on the process of gametogenesis, that is spermatogenesis in case of grasshoppers, right? So while again working on spermatogenesis in case of grasshopper, he said that this X body is nothing but a chromosome, right? And this chromosome is the one which is responsible for determining the sex of a particular organism. And then he started calling this X body as the X chromosome, right? So initially it was actually termed as X body by Henting, right? It was termed as X body by Henting. Later on, Macklung started calling the same X body as the X chromosome, and he concluded that this X chromosome is the one which is actually involved in determining the sex of the organism, right? So this is what we have with the brief about chromosomal basis of sex determination. So initially in the year 1891, a scientist by name Henting started working on the process of spermatogenesis in case of insects. And he observed that 50% of the sperms have one extra chromosome, whereas the remaining 50% of the sperms did not have that chromosome. So that extra chromosome, he started calling it as X body. But he could not explain what is the significance of this X body and what is its role in the particular organism. Later on, in the year 1902, another scientist by name Macklung, while working on the same process, that is gametogenesis in case of grasshoppers, he identified the same thing, and he said that this X body is nothing but one of the chromosomes which is responsible for determining the sex of a particular organism. Therefore, he started calling this chromosome as X chromosome. Now, since this X chromosome is involved in determining the sex of an individual, he started calling this X chromosome as the sex chromosomes. Right? He started calling the X chromosome as the sex chromosome. Right? So this is how the sex chromosomes or the X chromosomes came into picture. Right? It all began with the work of Henting, then came in Macklung, and Macklung said that this X chromosome, X body, is nothing but the X chromosome, which is involved in the determining the sex of an organism. Therefore, since X chromosome is involved in determining the sex of an organism, the X chromosome is also called as the sex chromosome. Right? Now, the chromosomes which are involved in the determining the sex, we start calling them as sex chromosomes. Right? So we are all familiar that all the organisms, including humans, have two types of chromosomes being present. Right? All the human individuals and most of the other organisms also, they have two types of chromosomes. One type we call them as autosomes. One is called autosomes and the other one is called allosomes. Right? So there are two different types of chromosomes which are being present. One is called autosomes and the other one is called allosomes. So what are these autosomes and what are allosomes? The chromosomes which do not have any role in determining the sex of an individual, we start calling them as autosomes. So what are autosomes? The chromosomes which do not have any role in determining the sex of an individual, we start calling them as autosomes. Now what about allosomes? The same thing again. In contrast to that, the chromosomes which are involved in determining the sex of an individual, we start calling them as allosomes. So these allosomes, we also call the allosomes as the sex chromosomes because they are also involved in the, because they are actually involved in the process of sex determination. Right? So we have two different types of chromosomes. One is called autosomes and the other one is called allosomes. So autosomes are the ones which do not have any role in determining the sex of an individual, whereas allosomes are the ones which play a major role in determining the sex of an individual. Right? So we start calling them as allosomes or the sex chromosomes. Right? Now, these allosomes again, based on these allosomes again in different organisms could be either similar or they could be dissimilar. Right? Try to understand this. We are talking about allosomes now. These allosomes in different organisms would be either similar to each other or it could be dissimilar. Right? Now, let us put it this way. The sex that produces two different types of gametes, right? So the sex that produces two different types of gametes, right? So the sex that produces two different types of gametes, we start calling them as heterogametic sex, right? So the sex that produces two different types of gametes, we call them as heterogametic sex, right? So what are heterogametic sex? Heterogametic sex. So what exactly is this heterogametic sex? The sex that produces two different types of gametes. Two different types of gametes. We start calling them as heterogametic cells. Now, when we say two different types of gametes, what does this mean? Two different types of gametes? There are two different types of allosomes. Now, since there are two different types of allosomes, two different types of gametes will be produced. Let us take the example of humans. In case of humans, males have 44 plus XY. This is the chromosome complement in case of males, human males. 44 are the autosomes. So we are not worried about that, right? So let us take these two allosomes. Now these two allosomes are said to be dissimilar. This is different, X is different, and Y is different. So during the process of gametogenesis, two different types of gametes would be produced. So one will have a sperm containing the X chromosome. The other gamete will have a sperm containing the Y chromosome. So two different types of gametes are produced. So if two different types of gametes are produced by a particular sex, such type of sex we start calling it as heterogametic sex. Right? So what exactly is this heterogametic sex now? The sex that produces two different types of gametes, we start calling it as a heterogametic sex. Example, human males, where there are two different allosomes being present, as a result of which two different types of gametes would be produced. One gamete will have the X chromosome, the other gamete will have a Y chromosome. Similarly, the second one what we have is called as homogametic sex. Homogametic sex. Now what does this mean, homogametic sex? Heterogametic, we call it as two different types of gametes. In homogametic sex, what would happen? The sex that has same type of gametes, or the sex that produces two identical gametes. Two identical gametes, we start calling it as homogametic cell. Homo means same. So there are two identical gametes which are being produced. So if there are two identical gametes produced by a particular sex, we start calling it as the homogametic sex. So the example what we can give here again, human females, where again the chromosome complement would be 44 plus X and X, right? So these 44 are autosomes, so we are not worried about that right now. So let us take up with X and X chromosome, which are the allosomes, right? So during gamete formation, these X and X will get divided so that each ovum will have only one X chromosome, right? So there are identical gametes which are being produced. Now, if there are identical gametes being produced by one single sex, such type of sex we start calling it as homogametic sex, right? So this is what we have as heterogametic sex and homogametic sex, right? Now, the first type type of sex determination, what we'll be talking about is, as I've already said, we have begun with the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So under chromosomal basis of sex determination, we'll be getting into internal classification again. So let us see the classification and then we'll get into the sex determination pattern seen in case of different organisms. Right? So remember, we are talking about the first type of sex determination, which is the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So this is the first one what we have started. Right. Now, under chromosomal basis of sex determination, we would have two different types of sex determinations present. Right? So we would have two different types of sex determinations which are present. One type of sex determination, we call it as the male heterogamety. The first type is called the male heterogamety, right? Second one would be termed as the female heterogamety. So the first one is male heterogamety and the second one is female heterogamety. Now, what does this mean? Heterogamety, we are now familiar with what exactly heterogamety is, right? If there are two different types of gametes being produced, such type of condition we call it as heterogamety, right? Or we call that particular sex as a heterogametic sex. Now here we are adding one more to it, which is called male heterogamety. So what does that mean? The males have said to show heterogamety, right? Males are said to show heterogamety. And in this case, we have called it as female heterogamety because in case of females, there are two different types of allosomes which are being present. So two different types of gametes would be produced in case of females. So that we'll take up here in the second set. In the first set, males will be producing two different types of gametes. So that we started calling it as male heterogamety. Now, under this male heterogamety, again, we can have two different classes, right? Under male heterogamety, we'll be having two different classes again. One type of sex determination under male heterogamety would be termed as XX and XY type of sex determination. So this is the first type what we'll be taking up. We call it as XX and XY type of sex determination under male heterogamety. The second type what we'll be talking about is called XX and X0 type of sex determination, right? So the first one would be XX and XY type of sex determination. We are talking about male heterogamety. Under male heterogamety, the first one would be XX and XY type of sex determination. The second category would be XX and X0 type of sex determination. So let us first begin with this, then we'll move on to that. Now, talking about this XX and XY type of sex determination. Now, which is male and which is female in this? XX would be the female. Why XX is female? Because we are talking about male heterogamety. Heterogamety is, what does heterogamety mean? If there are two different types of gametes which are being produced, that we start calling it as heterogamety. Now, who is producing two different types of gametes? So it is the male who is producing two different types of gametes. So here, X and Y chromosome containing organism would be the male here, right? So this would be male, X and Y containing organism would be male, X and X containing chromosome would be the female. Here also the same thing, X and X would be female and X and O would be male. Okay, so let's come back to this later. First we'll finish off with this one. So talking about XX and XY type of sex determination. So we are now clear that XX chromosomes are actually seen in case of males, XY chromosomes are seen in case of females. Now, in these two organisms, the male as well as the female organism, which organism is responsible for determining the sex of an organism? So let us take up with that. So let us make the normal cross as well as the Punnett square what we put up. So when we start with the cross for XX and XY, we know that XX will start producing only one type of gametes. So the X containing the X and X chromosome, whereas XY will start producing two different types of gametes. One sperm will have X chromosome and one sperm will have the Y chromosome. Right. Now, when we start making the Punnett square for this, right? So when we start making the Punnett square for this, right? So males here. So this would be X chromosome containing male and Y chromosome containing male. And here would be X chromosome containing egg and one more X chromosome containing egg. So when we start making a cross for this, so this X chromosome fuses with X chromosome of male, right? So therefore the sex what we'll get here, or the chromosomes here would be XX, and here it would be XY, and here also it would be XX, and here it would be X and Y. Now talking about the sex of this particular organism. Now since there are two X chromosomes, this individual will be a female individual. Now since there is X and Y chromosome, heterogeneity condition is seen. The male is the one will be having X and Y chromosome. So here again there will be X and X. So as a result it would be female organism. And here since there is an X and Y, this organism or this individual will be a male individual. So if you just observe here, it is the males who is responsible for determining the sex of the particular organism in this type of sex determination, right? So the males are the ones who are actually responsible for determining the sex of the individual in the first place. Right. So which organisms show this XX and XY type of sex determination? So two examples we can take. One is humans. We can take the example of humans. So humans fall under this category of sex determination, right? One is humans. The second example what we can take is Drosophila. Right? That is nothing but a fruit fly, where Morgan had actually worked on. So humans and Drosophila shows this type of sex determination, which is male heterogeneity. And in both the cases, male organism is the one which is responsible for determining the sex of the individual. Drosophila again has another type of sex determination. So that we'll take up little later once we are completely done with this. So there are two types of sex determinations shown in case of Drosophila. One is the chromosomal basis of sex determination, and other one, there is one more also. So that we'll take up once we are done with this, right? Okay, so this is the first type of sex determination what we have, which we call it as XX and XY type of sex determination, which is shown or which is seen in case of humans as well as the Drosophila. So this is the first one. Next, talking about the second type under male heterogeneity, we have XX and X0 type of sex determination. Right? So this XX and X0 type of sex determination was first given by a scientist by name McClung, as we have already seen in the beginning of the class, right? So this type of sex determination, XX and X0 type of sex determination, was first given by a scientist by name McClung. And what example can we take here for this? So the example what we can take is grasshoppers. Right, we have already seen that McClung was actually working on grasshoppers, right? So the type of sex determination that is seen in case of grasshoppers would be XX and X0 type of sex determination. Again, XX here would be female because they are homogametic, and we are talking about male heterogameity. So X and 0 is the one which is the male individual. Now, when we say X and 0, so what does that mean? X and 0 means, so there is only one allosome that is being present. So only one allosome is present. 0 denotes that one of the allosomes is actually missing. So what does that mean? In case of females, the chromosome number is normal. Whereas in case of males, males will have always one chromosome less than that of the females. Right? So males always have one chromosome less than that of the females in case of grasshopper. Now that we start calling it as male heterogameity. And since we are talking about male heterogameity, again, males are the ones which are responsible for determining the sex of the individual. Right? Again, let us take with the same Punnett square and we'll see what are the offsprings which are being formed. Now XX and X0, again, they start producing two gametes which are of the same type containing the X chromosome. XX and X0 again will start producing two gametes. One sperm will have an X chromosome and the other sperm will not have any chromosome. Right? So one chromosome, one sperm will have X chromosome and the other sperm will not have any chromosome at all. So if we start doing a Punnett square for this, start doing a Punnett square. So here we would have X chromosome of the male and the empty sperm, and here will be the X chromosome of the ovum on both the sides. So when we start making the cross, so this one will have X chromosome from the egg as well as the X chromosome of the sperm. And here there will be only one X chromosome and the sperm will not have any chromosome. Here also one X chromosome from the ovum, one X chromosome from the sperm, and here only X chromosome from the ovum and the sperm will not have any chromosome. Now talking about the sex of this individual, two X chromosomes, we know two X chromosomes are the female organism here. Only one X chromosome, the other chromosome is absent, so this will be a male organism here. Right here again, two X chromosome, the female organism, and here again only one X chromosome, so this will be the male organism. Right. So again here if we see, the males are the ones which are responsible for determining the sex of a particular organism, especially in case of grasshoppers. Right. Now if you see in both the cases, there are 50% of chances for both males as well as females in the progeny. Right. In the first case, if you see, 50% are said to be males, while the other 50% are said to be females. Here also in the second condition also, 50% are said to be males and 50% are said to be the female. Right. So this is the first type of sex determination what we have, that is chromosomal basis of sex determination. Under that, the first one what we have, male heterogameity. The males are said to be heterogametes, whereas the females are said to be homogametes. This is what we have with the first category. Now moving on to the second category, we have female heterogameity. So just like what we saw with regards to male heterogameity, where males had two different types of chromosomes, here the females would be having two different types of chromosomes. Right? Again, this female heterogameity could be again classified into two categories again. One is, right, so we can use both the same XX and XY type here also. But since both would be the same, we would get confused. So we are actually changing the alphabets here, right? So first one, what we have would be ZW type of sex determination. So Z represents X, W represents Y. Simple. That's it. Nothing much difference here. So the first type would be ZW type of sex determination, right? The second one would be same thing again. It would be ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination. So it would be ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination, right? So the first one is ZZ, ZW type of sex determination, and here it would be ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination. Let us first begin with this, then we'll go to that. Again, process, everything would be the same, but only thing what you need to remember is a few examples in each of the categories. Okay. Now, which is male and which is a female here? Now, since we are talking about ZZ chromosome, which is homogametic, so this ZZ will be male individual, whereas ZW would be the female individual, right? So ZZ would be male, ZW would be female. Why is ZW a female individual? Because we are talking about female heterogameity. So females are the ones which are responsible for producing two different types of sex gametes, or two different types of gamete. One gamete would have Z chromosome, one gamete would have W chromosome, right? So let us again begin the same thing. So the gametes which are being produced by ZZ type, so there are two sperms which are produced, and both the sperms will have Z chromosomes, right? Whereas this female will start producing two different types of gametes, one gamete with Z chromosome, the other gamete with W chromosome. So when we start making a Punnett square for this, so what do we get when we make a Punnett square for this, right? So here again, males would be here on the side, Z here and another Z here with males, and Z females and W chromosome in case of females. So when we start making the cross, so this would be Z, and this would be ZW, this would be ZZ, and this would be again ZW. So when we start talking about the sex, ZZ, we know it is a male individual here, right? ZZ again a male individual, ZW would be female here, and ZW would be female, right? So it is again the females who are responsible for determining the sex of the organism or sex of the individual in this particular case. Right? In the first two cases, we saw it as males who are involved in determining the sex. In the second condition, with regards to female heterogamety, we are talking about the females who are actually responsible for determining the sex of the individual. Right? So this type of sex determination, right? This type of sex determination is usually seen in case of birds and a few reptiles. Right? In case of birds and a few reptiles, we have this type of sex determination, which is ZZZW type of sex determination. So talking about the last one, which is ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination. Again, this is very much similar to ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination, where ZZ would be again the males and Z0 would be the females. Now again, if you see the chromosome number here, the females will have one chromosome less than that of the males, right? So females are the ones which have one chromosome less than that of the males, right? Now let's again take up with the gametes as well as the Punnett square here. So this will have Z containing sperm, Z containing sperm, and this will have Z containing ovum, and the other ovum will not have any chromosome at all. So when we start doing the Punnett square for this, right? So here we would have again the sperms containing the Z chromosome and egg containing Z chromosome, and the other one without any allosome or the sex chromosome. So when we start making the cross, so this would be ZZ. So this also would be ZZ, and this would be Z0. Right? So this would be Z0, and this also would be Z0. So talking about the sex of the individuals here, ZZ, so this would be a male, ZZ again, male, Z0, so this would be female, and this also Z0, so this would be a female here again. So again, in this condition, it is the females who are responsible for determining the sex of the individual. So this type of sex determination, that is ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination, is actually seen in case of a few butterflies, right? So some butterflies show this sort of sex determination, and then again there is a moth by name Fumia. So the Fumia moth again shows this type of sex determination, right? So ZZ, Z0 type of sex. So this is the first type of sex determination what we have, which is called as the chromosomal basis of sex determination. So what exactly are we seeing here? The sex chromosomes, that is the allosomes, are completely involved in determining the sex of a particular organism, right? Allosomes are involved in determining the sex of the organism. So under that, again, we had two different classes. One is called the male heterogamety and the other one is the female heterogamety. In male heterogamety, males are the ones which are actually responsible for determining the sex of an organism. Whereas in case of female heterogamety, females are the ones which are involved in determining the sex of the organism, right? So under male heterogamety, we had two different types again. One is called XX and XY type of sex determination. Examples what we have taken is humans and Drosophila. Second type is XX and X0 type of sex determination. The example what we have taken is grasshoppers. The second category under female heterogamety, we took two different types again. One is ZZ, ZW type of sex determination, which is shown by birds of some butterflies as well as a few reptiles also. And the third one, the last one what we have taken is ZZ and Z0 type of sex determination, which is seen in case of some butterflies as well as the moth called as human. Right? So this is what we have in the first class under sex determination, which is called as the chromosomal basis of sex determination. Right? So I hope all are clear with this, the first type, right? Okay, so let's move on into the second type of sex determination. So if you want, you can just take a screenshot of this, right? So that it will be useful for you, right? Okay, so the second type of sex determination, what we are taking up, right? So the second type of sex determination, what we'll be taking up is with regards to Drosophila, as I've already told you, right? So let's begin with the second type of sex determination, right? Which is seen mostly or actually seen in case of Drosophila. Right. So in Drosophila, as I already told you, there are two different types of sex determination happening. One type of sex determination is the chromosomal basis of sex determination. That is based on the XX and XY type of sex determination. That is one way how sex determination occurs in Drosophila. And the second way how sex determination occurs in Drosophila is by taking the ratio of X chromosome to the autosome ratio. Right? By taking the ratio of X chromosome to the autosome. So by identifying this ratio, what we actually call it as the X by A ratio. X is nothing but the X chromosome, A is the autosomes. So by identifying what is the ratio of the number of X chromosome to the number of autosomes, again, the sex is determined in case of Drosophila. So this X by A ratio of sex determination is seen in case of Drosophila. Right? Drosophila melanogaster. Right? So by taking X by A ratio, so we determine whether the organism is a male or whether the organism is a female. It all depends on this X by A ratio. So the role of Y chromosome in this organism is only to determine the fertility of the male organism. Right? So try to understand this. Y chromosome is only responsible for determining the fertility of the organism in case of Drosophila. Right? Now, let us take up the ratios here. Right? So if the X by A ratio is said to be 0.5. Try to take down these ratios because these are important to your exam point of view also. Right? If X by A ratio is said to be 0.5, that type of individual will be a normal male. Right? The individual would be normal male. Right? So if X by A ratio is said to be 0.5, then the individual would be a normal male. Second one, if X by A ratio is said to be 1.0 or if it is 1. If X by A ratio is said to be 1, then this individual will be a normal female. Right. So if X by A ratio is said to be 0.5, then the individual is a normal male. If X by A ratio is said to be 1, then the individual is normal female. Right. Next one. If X by A ratio is in between 0.5 to 1, right? So if X by A ratio is in between 0.5 to 1, we said 0.5 is normal male and 1 is a normal female. So if the ratio is in between 0.5 and 1, then that type of individuals we start calling them as intersex. We call them as intersex, or they are also called as gyneandromorphs. Right? So we start calling them as either intersex or we start calling them as gyneandromorphs. Right? So what does this gyneandromorphs mean? Gyno is something to do with females. Andro is again something to do with males. So what does this mean here? This type of individual will have both the male as well as the female organs present in the body. The external characters as well as internal characters, they'll have both the male as well as female organisms or female characters present in the body. So such type of individuals, we start calling them as intersex or gyneandromorphs. Right. The next one. If X by A ratio is less than 0.5, right? If X by A ratio is less than 0.5, such type of individuals, we start calling them as meta males. We call them as meta males, or we also call them as super males. Right? If X by A ratio is less than 0.5, such type of individuals, we call them as meta males or super males. The last one, if X by A ratio is more than 1, right? If X by A ratio is said to be more than 1, such type of individuals, we start calling them as meta females. We call them as meta females, or we also call them as super females. Right? So this is what we have. Now this meta males and meta females, they are actually said to be sterile individuals. Right? They are said to be sterile individuals. Now, based on the X by A ratio, in case of Drosophila, right? In case of Drosophila, based on the X by A ratio, we would determine what would be the sex of that particular organism. So if X by A ratio, that is nothing but the number of X chromosome to the number of autosomes, right? If the number of X chromosome to the number of autosomes is said to be 0.5, then that individual would be a normal male. Second, if the X by A ratio, that is the number of X chromosome to the number of autosome, if it is 1, then that individual again would be a normal female. Next one, if the same X by A ratio lies in between 0.5 to 1, right? If the X by A ratio lies in between 0.5 to 1, such type of individual, we start calling them as intersex, or we call them as gynandromorphs. So in this type of individuals, right, half of the body would be like male and the remaining half of the body would be like females, right? Half of the body like male and half of the body like female. So we start calling them as intersex or gynandromorphs. Gyno, something to do with females, andro, something to do with males, and morpho is nothing but the external features, right? So 50% of the body or half of the body would be like males and half of the body would be like females. So that is in case of X by A ratio lying in between 0.5 and 1. If the X by A ratio is less than 0.5, such type of individuals, we start calling them as meta males or super males, which are again said to be sterile organisms, right? Whereas if the X by A ratio is more than 1, such type of individuals, we call them as meta females or super females, where again they are also said to be sterile individuals. Right? So this type of sex determination is exclusively seen in case of Drosophila. So here in this X by A type of sex determination, Y chromosome does not have any role in determining the sex of the chromosome. Unlike what we have seen with XX and XY type of sex determination, in XX and XY type of sex determination, we saw that Y chromosome or XY or the males are the ones which are involved in determining the sex. But here, Y chromosome does not have any role in determining the sex of the individual, right? Whereas Y chromosome's role is to determine the fertility of that particular male organism. So if Y chromosome is present, the male organism would be fertile. If Y chromosome is not present, the male individual or the male organism would be sterile. Right? So this is the second type of sex determination what we have, which is sex determination based on the number of X chromosome to the number of autosomes. That is the X by A ratio of sex determination. Right? So this is the second type of sex determination what we have. So we have 1 or 2 more types of sex determination. So that will take up in the next session. Right? So in today's session, we have started off with sex determination. Under sex determination, 2 types of sex determination we have taken. One is sex determination based on the chromosome. We call it as chromosomal basis of sex determination. And the next one is the sex determination based on the X by A ratio. Number of X chromosomes to number of autosomes. Right? So this is what we have with today's session. Right?